So leadership is about achieving greatness by bringing out the greatness in people. For this, to have this mentality, to have this spirit, there is a virtue that you need to develop. And this virtue is called magnanimity. Magnanimity is the striving of the spirit, of the mind, of the will, of the heart, towards great things. It's the most complicated of all the human virtues. It's the virtue of excellence. It is difficult to develop this virtue because it's the virtue of the heart. It's like humility. Humility and magnanimity are virtues of the heart, which means virtue of the whole person. The four basic virtues, the one that Aristotle, Plato, and the ancient Greeks were used to call fundamental virtues because they are basic: prudence, the capacity to make right decisions; justice, the capacity to give each one what is due to him; self-control or self-mastery, the capacity to direct your passions and emotions; and courage, the capacity to stay the course, and the capacity for audacity. These are basic virtues, which means that if one of those four virtues is lacking fundamentally in your life, you as a human being, you will collapse. That is why the ancient Greeks call them the four basic virtues, four fundamental virtues. It doesn't mean that they are more important than the others. It means they are fundamental. They are the foundations on which you stand. You follow me? So people who practice those four virtues, we call them good people. In order to be a good person, you need to at least try to practice those four virtues. And those four virtues, we said they are fundamentally virtues of the intellect and the will. Prudence about intellect, the practical intellect, to grasp reality in order to make a decision that fits that reality, practical reality. Justice is the intellect and the will. The intellect because you have to grasp what is the thing I have to give to the other, to each person. And it's the virtue of the will because you also have to give it. It's not only enough to know, you have also to give to each one what is due to him. Self-control or self-mastery is a virtue that deals with passions and emotions, but it is a virtue of the will. All of us understand it very well. And courage is, of course, a virtue of the will. Audacity and endurance, these have a lot to do with the will. But then humility and magnanimity are virtues that are deeply rooted in the human heart. And that's why they are much more complicated to develop. But they go hand in hand. I will give a little bit more for explanations about this. Magnanimity is the striving of the spirit towards great things. It has to do with awareness of our own dignity. The beginning of magnanimity is to be aware that you are someone, that you have a specific dignity. For Christians, that is not very complicated because we understand our dignity as children of God. There is no higher dignity than this. But people who are not Christians can understand that they have a specific dignity because they have a spirit, that they are spiritual beings with a free will, with a conscience. So many people, 90% of people I speak with in seminars I give on virtuous leadership are not Christians, but they understand the meaning of the dignity of the human person. They understand the meaning. They are not just material beings, they are spiritual beings. So magnanimity has to do with the awareness of our personal dignity. It's awareness of our own talents. So people who are magnanimous, they want to know what their talents are in order to multiply those talents and put them at the service of the community. Magnanimous people are dreamers. They want to dream. They have a capacity for dream, but at the same time, they are deeply contemplative spirit who at the same time are deeply active people. That's why it's a very complicated virtue, because you need to be at the same time a contemplative soul with action. You're a doer and a philosopher at the same time. And it's not easy because very often we have a biological tendency that depends on our temperament, biological temperament, that pushes us in one direction or the other. You know, sometimes you push towards action biologically, and you have other people, they are pushed towards contemplation biologically. So it's not easy, but magnanimity is a virtue of people that are deep and that also in action. It's the virtue of people that are philosophers, contemplative spirits, that are also doers. So it's the virtue of people who are dreamers and who transform those dreams into missions. It's not enough to have a dream in order to be a magnanimous person. You need to be a dreamer that is transforming his dreams into action, into a mission. That's why mission is a very important word in magnanimity. It's a very important part of the virtue of magnanimity. It is awareness of your mission and working on your mission every day. So magnanimity, it's a vision of yourself, it's the vision of the world, it's the vision of the others. It is the striving of the spirit towards great things. It is the virtue of human hope, because it is a human virtue. And here we are saying, I'm going to say something that for certain people is not so easy to understand. Thomas of Aquinas was an incredible philosopher. And he understood perfectly those things, especially when he rediscovered Aristotle, the writings of Aristotle about magnanimity. And he began to pronounce some words that were for people around very surprising. We were used to hear about supernatural hope. You have to have hope in God. And Thomas says magnanimity is not about supernatural hope. It's about hope in yourself. Wow, people around are surprised. How can you have hope in yourself? I was told that I have to have hope in God. And Thomas explained to people what this was about. He said magnanimity is the virtue of human hope, because it's the virtue of people who trust the natural gifts that they have received from God. Not the supernatural, not the gifts of grace. They trust the natural gift that they have received from God. You have received a lot of gifts through nature, through education, through biology, through your parents, through your country. You have received a lot of stuff, and you need to trust those great, the big things, important things you've received from other people. And you need to investigate those things. You need to write your story. I tell my students all the time, write your story, investigate, ask questions to your parents, your grandparents, try to understand who you are, because many people live in you. You're not an individual, you're a person. You've received a lot, and 99% of what you are, you are the others. And you have to discover all those great things that you have received through nature that are in you. And this is the beginning really of magnanimity. It is the trust in those beautiful things that we have received through nature. These are talents. And this is not pride. Because you're aware that in the end of the day, all these talents, even natural talents, they come from God. They are not yours. So there is no place for pride. You follow me? This is pure humility. Humility is the habit of living in the truth. That's the definition of what humility is about. Humility is the habit of living in the truth. The truth is that you have weaknesses and flaws, but at the same time that you have powers, talents, gifts. So if you focus only on the dark side of your personality, you're not in the truth. You are a liar. You are a small person. You cannot achieve magnanimity. And many people, unfortunately, have been brought up in this false humility. And that's a key point I want to mention here. What's the problem with leadership? There is a serious problem with leadership. It is that many people have been educated in humility, but a humility without magnanimity, which is false humility. Remember always that. The more you speak about humility, the more you need to speak about magnanimity. If not, you corrupt people you're speaking with, because you don't help them understand what is true humility. Humility is the habit of living in the truth. Yes, we are 100% dependent from God. Metaphysical humility. You are a created being, you're not a God. You have a nature. Basic things. Basic humility. But at the same time, there is what we call the ontological humility. Who are you? Well, you're a son of God, you're a daughter of God, you're a spiritual being, you have incredible things. Be aware of those things. You have gifts, you have talents. This is also the truth about you. Yes, you are a sinner. That's right. But that's not all. If you focus, I am nothing because I am a created being and I am a sinner, if you stop here, you cannot develop magnanimity and you cannot be truly humble because you have just 50% of the truth. And humility is it's whole the truth. It's the habit of living in the truth. So there are things in you which are your dignity as a human being, your dignity as a son and a daughter of God, and you have also all those talents that you have to discover inside yourself that are gifts that were given to you. If you don't focus on this, you cannot be humble. And you cannot be, of course, be magnanimous. Remember, there is an American writer called Flannery O'Connor. Once she was giving a talk, and in the end of the talk, some people asked her, Flannery, why do you write in the end of the day? And she answered, I write because I write well. She was giving an example of what magnanimity is about. She was telling these people, this is my service to humanity, it's to write because I write well. I have thought about who I am. I know my talents. I have gratitude towards God. I thank Him every day for the gift He has given to me. I feel responsible for that gift. I want to multiply that gift, and I want to serve you with that gift. So if you ask me why do I write, there is only one answer, and I will not lie to you. I write because I write well. Of course, people around did not understand. They thought it was a lack of humility, a lack of modesty. But people with true humility don't need modesty. C.S. Lewis wrote about this. True humility does not need modesty. Because if you're truly humble, you just speak the truth. Modesty is for those people who cannot be humble. If not, they would be unbearable. You know, modesty is a small virtue compared to humility. Humility is enormous. It's the whole truth about who you are. People need to learn to speak about their talents and their gifts in a very natural way. And your children, very young, need to be capable of saying, this is me. Mama tells me that this is me. Daddy tells me that this is me. This is my gift, and it's been given to me. It's not the product of my personal activity. It is a gift from God to me. So I will focus on that. I will multiply this. Yes, I have weaknesses, but I need to focus on those great things that I have received. A young boy, young girl need to be capable of speaking with the naturalness, without pride, with the naturalness about who she is. Need to be capable of understanding the great things she has received or he has received, and be capable of multiplying this and understanding this is something, this is a capital for all his life. If not, we frustrate people. We don't help them understand who they are. And in the end of the day, they don't know how to relate to their gifts, and they forget about their gifts. They don't speak about it. And then their gifts just collapse, and they don't become leaders, and they don't serve humanity. So the whole truth here is about understanding the truth about yourself and being capable of speaking about that truth with naturalness. The problem is that so many people don't know those concepts, they don't know those notions, and they don't know how to deal with that. They don't have the formation, the education to understand those things. And then they don't know how to relate to their gifts. They feel that I cannot speak about my gifts because what people are going to think about. The Flannery O'Connor story is a typical story. People were upset by her answer. And all those guys were good Catholics. And they were upset. She was the only one who was right in that room of 300 people. And they knew nothing about all those things. So the problem with magnanimity is that Thomas of Aquinas has not been followed. People were afraid of him. When you read Thomas of Aquinas on magnanimity, Thomas, he was really a revolutionary guy. He had a vision of the future. He understood what a layman is. He understood that in a way or another we had to get out of Middle Ages. The problem with humility, what it is that with magnanimity, when you're a father of a family and you have a lot of kids, when you're involved in politics, when you have a business, well, you have to have magnanimity. But when you're a monk in a monastery, it's not absolutely necessary. Because you have a responsibility, of course, in front of God, which is big, but you are not an actor of social life. Magnanimity, says Thomas, is the virtue of doers. And he says it's much more powerful than courage. It gives much more power and strength and energy to your life because it's about who you are. You understand? So magnanimity has become a very important virtue nowadays, especially for Christians. They need to understand it much better than we understood it in the Middle Ages. Thomas understood it perfectly, but he was not followed. In a way or another, they told him, "You're a bit crazy, Thomas. You're a bit crazy. Your stuff on magnanimity, it doesn't sound very Christian. Hope in yourself is crazy. You have to hope in God." Imagine our Christian who are going to tell them you have to hope in yourself. Yeah, they'll become crazy with that. Thomas was not followed. And that's why the virtue of magnanimity was not studied enough. And we spoke a lot about humility, 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 but people even don't know how to pronounce in English the word magnanimity. I presented at the War College a few years ago in Carlisle, in the USA. I spoke about magnanimity 1 hour. And there is a general came to me and say, the magnanimity thing was good. They never heard about this word. They never heard about it. For the ancient Greek, it's a basic word, megalopsychia. Megalopsychia means big spirit. They use this all the time. Aristotle wrote a lot about this. Thomas of Aquinas wrote about this. So, what I want to tell you is that you need to investigate more this beautiful thing about magnanimity. There is a French Dominican, his name was René Gautier, who died in the 50s. He was one of the greatest Thomist philosopher in France after the Second World War. He wrote a book called Magnanimity. It's 2,000 pages. But it's so well written that all those who speak French can find it and read it. It's the history of magnanimity. Magnanimity, we say in French. It's the story of the Latin magnanimitas and the Greek megalopsychia. It's a beautiful book. And he mentioned all those problems in the Middle Ages, during Thomas' time, Thomas Aquinas after him. It was a very complicated process, the process of making magnanimity and humility fit together. Magnanimity and humility fit together in a very simple way. If you're aware of your talents, if you love your talents, if you try to multiply them, you're magnanimous. And at the same time, if you understand that your talents are gifts from God, even the talents given by God through nature, they're gifts from God in the end of the day, then you are humble because you know the truth. The truth is that you have talents, and the truth is that those talents are gifts from God. If you know those things, you're peaceful. If one of those two elements is missing, you will collapse. If you have no humility, you build a big tower, but there is no foundation. And because you think that those talents are yours. But there is no foundation. There is no truth there. So you will collapse. And if you know that all gifts are gifts from God, but you don't investigate your personal gift, your natural gifts, then there is no magnanimity. You will not build. You will not serve like God wants us to serve. And then in the end of the day, you will be useless. You will not contribute to humanity the way God would have liked you to contribute. You know? I am from France, so I always mention Joan of Arc. She was an incredible person. We like Joan of Arc very often because she's a manager. She was a choleric. She was born a manager. She had a goal to throw out the British from France. And many people stop to this, say she did it, that was good management. She did and she died. In the end of the day, the story with Joan of Arc is not a management story. It's a leadership story. Because when you look at her story, you see that the only thing she's really doing is that she's transforming the souls and the minds of millions of people who are just small people in darkness. It's one of the most beautiful leadership stories of history. Not because she achieved the goal, not at all, because she transformed millions of people. After her death, the French are very different people. The problem of France was not that there were British in France. That is not a problem, that's just history, friends. The problem of France was that those French people were not French anymore. They were no human beings. They were small, they were cowards, and they were under the power of fear. And they were afraid of anything. They didn't want to fight. They had no sense of personal dignity. It was a country of maximum pusillanimity. After she died, it's another country. They are different people. This was her service to humanity. And the stuff with bringing the Brits outside French, this is small story. It's just the management stuff. You follow me? Leadership is about transforming people. It's about helping people grow. It's about giving hope to human beings. It's about helping them overcome their limitations. And the last word I want to remind you, because my students ask me all the time, what is greatness about? The true greatness is about human perfection. To build a tower, to build a big business all over the world, an empire, business empire, this is still not greatness. The only greatness is the leadership greatness. It's help people overcome their personal limitations. That is what leadership is about. And we must never forget that, because many people speak about greatness all the time. Great. What they have in mind is material greatness. But material greatness is not true greatness. The only true greatness, the one that lasts all the time, is education. People that because of you have become great persons. People that because of you have found a meaning in their lives, discovered who they are, got a lot of hope, have moved forward, have contributed to humanity, and have become excellent personalities. This is the only greatness. It is the greatness of leadership. Thank you very much.